Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack, and today I'm going to introduce you to a car that says, I know I'm quite ugly, but I'm also damn charming. It is the Alfa Romeo 75. It was known as the 75 to celebrate 75 years of Alfa Romeo's existence. And interestingly, in the US it was actually known as the Milano, not the 75. Why is that interesting? Well, because Milano is actually Milan, which is a town in Italy in which I was born exactly, well not exactly, but 48 years ago. I think we can say with a fair amount of certainty that this is the last real Alfa Romeo. It was released in 1985 and Fiat took over a year later in 1986. Alfa had been making a loss for the previous 13 years, and so you can decide for yourself whether you think that the Fiat takeover was a good or a bad thing, but I think by that stage the Italian government had had enough and decided to offload the company. Incredibly, Alfa was actually owned by the Italian government from 1933 to 1985. It must be one of the longest runs of state ownership for a car company anywhere. Sorry for the little cross. That is something that the owner is Italian, Fabio, and his grandmother insisted that he have this in the car to protect him. And it used to belong to his grandfather, so it's quite a nice story, I guess, but it's going to get in the way of the camera. So let me just try and flick it back and see if we can, yeah, I think that's better where it is. It was actually quite a success story by Alfa standards, because within the first 3 years they'd already sold 250,000 of them, and in its 7-year run, so between 1985 and 1992, they managed to sell close to 400,000 cars. However, unfortunately it was part of Alfa's downward trend. And I think it's quite clear if you compare it to the cars that were around at the time that were competitors for this. So, for example, it was really mainly, I guess, the BMWs, the 3 Series, the E30, and then in the latter part of the run, the E36. And they were both cars that were just so much more complete on every level. In terms of quality and build, they were better, the ergonomics were better, the design was still really good, but it was much more cohesive than you get on these 75s. They were just more usable, they were better quality cars, and it did show. However, when you get back to today, these have now started to get a cult status, and when you become a classic car, different things matter. So first of all, a lot of the issues get ironed out over time. Secondly, things like usability and quality matter much less. So they are pretty desirable cars, despite the fact that they do have a very, very odd look about them. I can't make my mind up. I love it from some angles, hate it from others. It's quite ungainly. But as I mentioned in the introduction, it may be ugly, but oh my God, does it have some character. This one is a Cloverleaf. They were made, I believe, only in the latter part production, so from 90 to 92. Now, even the standard cars, technically, were really quite trick things, because they had perfect 50-50 weight distribution, front and back. That was because it's a transaxle car. So the gearbox is at the back and the clutch. They even went so far as to put the brakes inboard so that there was less unsprung weight. The 2-litre and the 3-litre cars came as standard with limited slip diffs, which I think is unheard of for a little family car, a cooking sort of family car like that. And lastly, it had a D-Dion rear axle at the back, which, although it's not fully independent rear suspension, it is quite a costly solution to use. And in some ways, it has some advantages even over fully independent suspension. So it was quite a trick thing to do at the time. So as I mentioned, this one is a Cloverleaf. Not only is it a Cloverleaf, but the engine has been fettled by Auto Delta. So the owner, Fabio, was telling me that there's a printout actually showing that it's putting out 220 horsepower, so definitely more than standard. It also feels to me as if the clutch has got a lightweight flywheel, because this engine is so responsive. It's absolutely fantastic. My God, that sounds absolutely awesome. Okay, so perhaps in terms of ergonomics, they weren't the best cars. I mean, one of the things that strikes you is this handbrake. Unbelievable. What were they thinking? And secondly, the switches for the windows, you'd think they would be here next to your left arm or right arm on this side, but no, these are for the rear windows. For the front windows, they're up at the top there. Really bizarre choices. The glove box opens when you accelerate too hard. I don't know if it would have done that as standard. The interior though it's not quite as it's more solid than I thought it would be. It's not BMW standards for sure, but it's not too bad compared to some of the Fiat products at the time, and I was definitely expecting worse. When it first came out, they made great fanfare of the computer on the 75, which was a diagnostics computer. And here we have the sort of dash there. It's back at the time when little techie things like that quite impress people. But it's a shame really that Alfa didn't put more effort into sort of quality rather than worrying about that, you know, the sort of gimmicky side of things. Oh, the Busso V6, it's just a magic engine. These versions of the Busso were actually fuel injected. It revs only to 5.5. I say only 5.5 because on my GTA I think it was going up to 6.5, and they can go up higher, but doesn't feel like you're missing it. It revs with massive gusto. Now, one of the areas in which this is supposed to be better than the E30, although it's not as tail happy, so maybe less fun in that way, is that it's so well balanced. And you can feel that in corners. It's absolutely lovely. The steering isn't super quick. This one's got a different steering wheel. It's smaller than standard, so it probably sharpens it up a little bit. But it's really nice. It's really pointy, really well balanced. The ride, this has Bilstein dampers, so it's probably slightly stiffer than normal, but the car moves around a little bit, but it's lovely. It irons out all the bumps. You know, nowhere near as stiff as some of the modern cars. The driving position, unbelievably, is great. The legs are a little bit scrunched up, but the steering wheel is adjustable. And definitely I'm not getting that real long arm, short leg syndrome that I've got in so many Italian cars of the era. It's lovely. Really easy to heel and tow. Just... that engine is just orgasmic. Feels so different to the one in my 145. The gearbox was one of the areas which they really said was, you know, one of the worst bits of the car. Having the gearbox at the back, obviously the linkage isn't great, and it's a little bit notchy, it's a little bit vague. I haven't had too much problems. I think third to fourth gear is fine, fifth is fine. I think it's first to second which can be a bit of an issue. This is just amazing. It does feel floored, and I mean, you can hear it sort of rattling around. It feels a little bit loose, but it's just, it's that engine. Oh. So when you push on, I mean, don't think about lurid sort of rear wheel slides. It doesn't seem to do that. It's just, you know, you get a little bit of mild understeer, but it's so lovely to throw around on a proper road like this. What a car. So is this really the last Alfa Romeo? And is it any good? Well, to me, it definitely is the last Alfa. It's quite an odd company, the history that it's had. And it's amazing that it survived for that long in government hands, quite frankly. It's sort of quite soft, it leans into corners a little bit. It's not ultra sharp dynamically, but the engine is incredible and it's just so neutral and has so much more character than the modern stuff that I love it. So much for watching as always. If you have an interesting car that you want me to do a review on, please get in touch with me. Instagram is the best way for that. And yeah, really look forward to seeing you for the next video. If you haven't subscribed, please do that, really helps. Hope you have a great Christmas and see you very soon.